back. I'm Paul Fabrizio.
And I'm Don Frazier. It's like deja vu around here.
Yes, we're back.
We're back.
All right. And we're here to talk about the Constitution line by line, and that leads us to this all-important one, Article 1, Section 8. We're talking the powers of Congress. We're getting right to war. Ready?
This is Clause
11.
All right, so 1, 8, 11.
And it says, we're talking powers of Congress. So Congress shall have the power to, here we go, to declare war, grant letters of marque, I hope I'm saying that right.
You are.
And reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. So first thing, real quickly, regarding captures, make rules regarding captures on land and water. This is just following on to the pirates in the last one.
Also,
but
it also has to do with prize courts.
Prize courts? What are prize courts?
All right, there were rules
Okay.
that if you were a member of a crew on a ship that captured an enemy ship,
Okay.
that you could tow that ship into a port, sell that ship and its contents, and the proceeds could be divided up amongst the crew.
Oh.
And that was a big thing in the Navy.
I'm sure.
And
You could get rich.
that was going on all the way through the American Civil War.
Really?
So imagine if you're a gunboat skipper going down the Mississippi, and there's a plantation load of cotton.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to stop the boat, load the cotton. That'll go to a prize court, and all of a sudden there's a little extra something in your paycheck. If you're, gunner number 3 back on the 9-inch Dahlgren in the rear of the boat. So this is kind of an interesting thing. You also mentioned letters of marque.
Marque
and reprisal. Okay.
We're totally ignoring the part about declaring war.
We're backing
to it.
Yes, we're working our way back to it because there's war and then there's also war.
Working our way back to you.
Yeah, well, war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. All right. So the letters of marque essentially is a commission by the federal government in which they commission a private individual to wage war on their behalf.
Yes.
Now then, we think of letters of marque as being sort of freelance commerce raiders.
Mm-hmm.
And they're incentivized because if they knock off an enemy ship, they can take that ship and its contents to a prize court.
Mm-hmm.
Now we need to think about how this might apply to contractors.
Private contractors who did a lot of fighting in the Gulf War.
And are doing a lot of fighting globally even as we speak.
Yes.
Because these are almost the same sort of instance where we're taking a private enterprise and commissioning it on behalf of the federal government to conduct operations of marque and reprisal.
Congress allows for that.
It does.
Congress is not issuing those letters. They're not granting the letters per the Constitution. They're basically saying to the Department of Defense, carry out this mission.
Yeah.
And so,
And that may include...
It may include these military activities.
Correct.
Interesting.
Which is an awful lot like war, because there's people getting shot at and shooting at you and stuff blowing up, but it's not war.
Right. And they're not covered, are they, by military code of justice?
They're contractors.
They're contractors.
They're out there freelancing, which means if you massacre a bunch of civilians, you're on your own, pal.
Yeah.
And that doesn't become wrapped up in international treaty.
Yeah.
That's why...
It's a dangerous place to be at.
It's a very dangerous place to be. I mean, if you're a privateer, which is what someone with a letter of marque was called, so they're not a pirate.
Right.
They're a privateer. Big distinction. Pirates serve no nation. Privateers serve whoever their commissioning country is. And historically, some guys had commissions from several countries simultaneously, including countries that may be at war with each other. So I guess they just hit each other in the, hit themselves in the face every morning. But
that's from France.
That's right. That's shabab. But what's going on now is you have the phenomenon of the little green men.
Little green men.
And the little green men are where you take military personnel. They're no longer military personnel, but they still have all the gear and equipment of the military personnel, but no insignia.
Okay.
Now they're contractors. So this is a way of moving people away from the standing armies of Country X and turning them into essentially modern-day privateers with letters of marque.
Mercenaries.
Mercenaries are slightly different because mercenaries go to the highest bidder. Letters of marque is, we're Country X, we want you to do our bidding. We just don't want to have to pay for you to do our bidding. So you get to be a free enterprise entrepreneur,
right,
and figure out how you're going to make this work, but you know that there's going to be a paycheck coming from
somebody,
your contractor.
So can I go to the Federal Register, which records all federal acts, and find letters of marque?
Yes.
Specifically identified?
Yes.
For, what's it called, Blackhawk Corporation or whatever?
That's probably now going to be, we have appropriated to the Department of Defense this big pile of money, and they use it how they see fit.
So that would be not in the Federal Register so much as in the Congressional Record or in the actual text of the appropriations bill.
Or you have to go and audit the Department of Defense and how they're spending their money, and then they will claim privilege.
Okay, now I've heard a different definition for letters of marque, not to exclude yours,
sure,
but that Congress, if they want to, could actually issue their own letters of marque.
Yes.
To the U.S. military to say, we want you to go fight this enemy at this location. Is that a correct interpretation?
I've never heard it that way.
Okay.
And see, that's where we roll back to the first part of this clause, which is declarations of war. So if the military is an extension of the federal government,
yes,
or a tool of the federal government, letters of marque are, dadgummit, I needed a 3/8-inch wrench, and I don't have it in my toolbox. But I know this private citizen has a 3/8-inch wrench, and I need him to apply it to this particular issue. I will commission him with a letter of marque to use that 3/8-inch wrench on behalf of the federal government.
Who is doing the commissioning?
That would be, well, Congress gets the power.
But Congress wouldn't issue the letter of marque.
Probably not. They would probably delegate that authority to whoever a theater commander was or something else. So CENTCOM in a modern context, or Zachary Taylor sitting on the beach in Corpus Christi in a different context.
On his way to the presidency.
And it's a great way in the early part of American history to expand, for instance, your Navy without having to buy a Navy.
You just have ships that you, in essence, contract with.
Correct. And so there's a great series of books called Master and Commander. And in that particular series of books, it's about American privateers. And an American privateer that eludes coming to justice by the British Royal Navy and things like that. And in the movie, he's it's French, but his
the movie was great.
Yeah, it was great. So take the French flag off and put it
American.
Yeah, but it's an American working under a French letter of marque against British interest. And so that's kind of where all this is wrapped up. So let's go back to talking about the right to or the power to declare war. Yeah. Because we can declare quasi-war. We can use private individuals to do things on our behalf. What about when we actually use the military?
Well, in essence, we're talking about it. It's not a modern historical question because we haven't used this power to declare war since World War II. So all of our recent conflicts have never been declared wars.
They've been declared police actions.
Congress has given the okay for the president to use troops as the president sees fit.
Correct. So they've abdicated this role?
That's the argument, is that Congress has specifically refused to declare war. For example, President Obama, is my understanding, actually requested a declaration of war for the United States in Syria to deal with ISIS. And Congress did not take him up on it. And
because their names would appear in the congressional record.
Yeah. And, you can make the argument that the request was not a serious request. It was, I'm just going to put those people in their place, tell them to shut up.
Sure.
By sending over this request to them, are they really?
You don't like the way I'm doing it, then y'all do it.
You would do it.
Yeah.
And so they didn't want to do it. He really didn't want them to do it. Instead, he continued. He did the authorization, or he did had the authority through other acts of Congress.
Sure.
So,
war's serious.
War is very serious, and the United States, since World War II, has simply refused to be serious about it.
Well,
in a legislative, constitutional sense.
Correct. Now then, maybe part of the problem is, how do you define war?
That is, I agree, that's part of it. You pick your war that's never been declared a war. The Indian Wars, for example, Vietnam War.
Yeah, 58,000 dead Americans in a non-war.
What does it take to be a war?
Yeah, what does it take to be a war? So if you take a look at the history of war and you take a look at the post-World War II era, the number of wars has plummeted.
Yes.
And the body count has plummeted to historic lows. But still, if somebody's shooting at me and stealing my stuff, that looks an awful lot like a war.
Is it a war?
So,
and see, Congress,
it depends on what the definition of is.
There you go. Thank you, Bill Clinton.
Yes.
Congress created a power, the War Powers Act, in the 1970s to deal with the Vietnam War.
Correct.
And what they thought was an unchecked presidential power.
Correct. So that way they could turn off the money spigot,
right,
to fund whatever military adventure that president was on.
Right. And see, what we're talking about is a conflict here between the first article of the Constitution and the second, presidential versus congressional power.
Correct.
But that War Powers Act has only been called into operation, into effect, once. And that was currently in this year, 2019, when Congress invoked the War Powers Act to stop the president's actions in Yemen.
In Yemen. Place that never shows up on the headlines.
What war is going on in
But
Yemen?
now all of a sudden we have an aircraft carrier group steaming that direction, and I can't find any news about it. We got B-52s leaving Barksdale. But I can tell you that Attorney General Barr is a bad guy.
There you go.
Over and over again. And I can also tell you that Archie is the new kid's name over in the UK.
Okay. So, but that's a whole
different deal.
Okay. So we've got this military action that's going on in Yemen. And Congress is saying we can't do it. But Congress passes this act, the War Powers Act. It has to go to the president. The president vetoes it.
Yeah.
And Congress can't override it. So
there you go.
The power
it's
is
status
back
quo
in the
antebellum, as they say.
Yeah. So the president still has the power. Just went through this legislative, we disagree with you action by Congress. But
now it's in the record.
Yeah. And that's it. And so we continue. So Congress, by failing to declare war,
has lost control
of war.
Correct.
And it's all in the hands of the president, except for one thing. Congress still sets the budget. So you would think Congress could just cut the funding. But do the letters of marque and using private people, contractors, is that a way around it?
That's the wave of the future, I can tell you that. That will be the wave of the future.
When we're growing up, we think this is so clear-cut.
Correct.
Congress declares war because the president says we're in this situation. But no, it's not that at all.
Not anymore. And, the problem with declaring war and having that power is kids come home in boxes.
Yeah.
And those kids' parents vote.
Yeah.
So to me, this has just been an abdication.
On the part of Congress.
On the part of Congress. And
right.
I'll go on the record saying that.
Yeah, and the flip side of it is we are giving more and more power then to the president.
The imperial presidency.
The imperial presidency. There we go. Okay. Anything else to say about this line?
No, it's an interesting montage
yes.
of powers.
Yeah, and the founders understood pirates. They understood privateers.
And they thought they understood war.
Exactly. All right.
That's our line. All right, we'll pick it up again next episode.